Dane and Derek is an uncensored, unfiltered podcast. You can find content warnings in the episode description. Thank you for listening. Hey everyone, welcome back to our little corner of the internet. My name is Derek, and this is our show, Dane and Derek, where we talk about art, Dungeons and Dragons. We should probably change that. With me as always is my good friend Dane.
I'm Dane. I'm a writer. I'm a law student, and a lover of tabletop RPGs. We do talk a lot about tabletop RPGs, and that means talking about D&D. It's like being a fan of like car racing and not talking about NASCAR. It'd just be kind of tough. You'd have to mention it, even if you were like really into like European Grand Prix or whatever.
Right, yeah.
I don't know if that's even a thing. I know nothing about racing cars, by the way. I don't know why I landed on that metaphor. Anyways, let me give my 1 minute law school update real quick. So I'm doing mock trial this semester. Yeah, I'm actually really looking forward to it. Holy hell, it's like a whole extra class. It makes perfect sense why next year I can get credit for it. I wish I could get credit for it now. Super cool though. We'll say the pretend case, and I think you're gonna really love this. Or I don't know if you're gonna love this. It's actually really tragic and sad. But like you're gonna find this interesting, Derek. It's the Rust movie with Alec Baldwin and Matt Tragedy.
Yeah.
They just copy and pasted it.
I see. Okay.
Yeah, the fake movie they came up with is called Spur. They're not even.
Yeah, they're not even really trying.
Lawyers are not necessarily creative writers. Let me just say that. Yeah, okay. I'm like, wow, this is you barely change the. It's a B name. I need to double check for the Alec Baldwin stand-in. Even it's.
Oh boy.
Yeah, it's. But anyways, it's super cool. I'm super excited about it. I have a killer co-counsel teammate. And so nice. I'm really excited about it. All right, film update. You go.
Yeah, so I'm working on applying to I guess it's like a grant program or a sponsorship program. That would basically, if I were to get it, like people would be able to donate money to the film, and it would be tax deductible, kind of like an NPR.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and it would be like through I guess like a fairly well-known program throughout the film industry. Folks might know it, but I don't want to say it until I'm 100% sure I got it. So I've been working on that application. I had to come up with a budget for the film, and so it's been a lot of like research and thinking about like how much is it going to cost to rent a school? How much is it going to cost to hire an actor? How much is it going to cost to do this stunt?
Right.
So trying to think through that and trying to think through it more in like a, because like we've made plenty of budgets before, Dane, but like this is probably the beastiest budget I've ever had to work on. So because it's
right.
Because like this time it's like, yeah, I need to budget for like safety and like COVID-19 officers and like tests for people, as well as like we need to have like 1 or 2 meals a day, and we need to budget for overtime and like paying people. And so it's definitely more not necessarily any more legit than, hey, we have a $500 pizza budget for this movie. But it's certainly there's a bit more line items that I think are very convoluted, but yeah. Yeah, so I'm currently doing that through a spreadsheet, which thank goodness for my roommate Zach, who is a spreadsheet fiend and made a budget template that we've used in the last few movies. So I've luckily have that, but it's still a lot.
Folks who are good at that shit. Love it. Well, onto our topic.
Yes. So this episode title is Prelude to an OSR. And basically you had pitched it to me as talking about like if we've played OSR styled games and what systems or system we think we'd use to play one now, and if we're tempted or have actually run one.
Yeah. Let me give a quick refresher. We definitely we have an OSR episode from last year because I'm low key super obsessed with it right now. It's the OSR is stands for Old School Renaissance or Old School Revival. And that's basically for tabletop games which draw inspiration from like the earliest days of like tabletop RPGs from like the 70s,
Oh,
especially like original D&D. Um,
I didn't know it stood for both. Um,
yeah, I don't really think anyone fully agrees on which it stands for, and it's
gotcha.
um, also like everyone just ends up calling it the OSR anyways. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Huh.
so yeah, so I think the basic understanding is like there's a it's just like it's a tabletop RPG counterculture, which is hilarious because on for so long just tabletop RPGs was kind of a counterculture period. So it's like there's always a counterculture to the counterculture within the counterculture, right? Um, so yeah, we had like yeah 3 parts. Which one was first? Is it have we played one?
I think it was, yeah, if we played one. Yeah.
Have you played one, Derek? And we cannot count the fact that the people who taught us D&D just had us play OG or advanced D&D. Like that doesn't count,
Right. I
unfortunately.
think, let me see. Um, yeah, so I've played the Mecha Hack, which is a hack of the Black Hack. Um,
Nice.
so yeah, that's the only one I've technically played.
Mm-hmm.
Which I like the system. I think whenever you have a system that flips and has subtraction into it, it really messes people up when you have both
It
addition
super
and
does.
subtraction. And so I think that's something that I definitely think about a lot with like the game design. But overall, I had a really fun time with Mecha Hack. It was like really easy to pick up and play giant robots, and I know a lot of
Mm.
like mecha games can become very math heavy and
Technical.
very technical. Um, like I've been trying to learn Lancer with some friends for the last year. Um,
Yeah.
like we all got the books and we've all been like reading them and trying to understand like the lore and the mechanics and you know
Lancer is the coolest thing I own that I absolutely don't understand.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, you are literally like the third person I've talked to who said that. And I've been like trying to like figure it out. I'm trying to like figure out if there's a way I can boil it down to the core fundamentals. Can I run a bad version of it? And I have not arrived at that conclusion yet, but yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So
It's so cool. Like the art is so cool, the vibe is so cool, and I'm just like, I don't understand this. I do
yeah,
not understand this.
yeah.
And every time I get close, it turns the page, and then it's like when you're out of your mech, and I'm like, oh shit. Like, but yeah, I will say I have not actually gotten the chance to play an official like, and by official I just mean like kind of recognized within the community OSR game.
Mm,
Um, I just you know like they're out there, um, but like for a long time I was like in the indie and story game space with stuff like Dungeon World and Follow, um, Fall of Magic, Dust of the Traveled Road, just stuff for the podcast specifically because those games lend themselves so nicely to that format because it stays really story based and it's just not crunchy at all. Because OSR games they're not crunchy like Lancer or even as crunchy as 5e or something. Um, but they have a certain crunch to them, um, wherein like intuitiveness is not always what they're going for. Some OSR games super are, but like
right.
you know like old school essentials, for example, which maybe is like kind of I don't know if I would say it's the gold standard, but it's like the epitome of like OSR games because it's just a redux of like original and advanced D&D and whatnot. Um, it even though it's like much cleaner than those original books and easier to understand, there's just like
Mhm.
some weird counterintuitive. Like you said, whenever you start subtracting stuff, people start getting confused and like armor class was so weird. Um,
Yeah.
Anyways, but like that's kind of like the vibe, for lack of a better term.
Hmm.
um yeah, I haven't gotten the chance to play. um so yeah, speaking of that though, what systems would you want to play? um
Hmm.
what are the systems you would really love to get into from like the OSR?
So let's see. We've talked about Five Torches Deep.
Yeah, that one's because that's a 5e hack.
Yeah.
Like that's the one I think I would run if I were really trying to convince people to play an
Mm.
OSR.
Yeah.
Because I think it would be the easiest transition for people.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think there's that one, and then there's Beyond the Wall and Through Sunken Lands.
You sent me those. Those looked really cool.
Yeah, I think what I like about Beyond the Wall and Through Sunken Lands is that they're basically the same game, but their flavor is catered differently to like different genres of fantasy. I
Mm-hmm.
think the kind of structure of it's just three classes
Yeah.
and fighter, wizard, rogue basically, and
Yep.
any combination of those creates the other classes. I think is really interesting.
Yeah.
Um what I like about it too is that it has enough traditional TTRPG vernacular that it it like to like a person who's never played an OSR or an old school game, like
Mm-hmm.
it would be easy to pick up. Um I think what I really like though, so I think like Beyond the Wall, I think definitely is on my list of like, yes, this is what I would want to play. But I did buy all of Five Torches Deep. Um, so I
I
I
I
have like
believe. Yeah.
yeah, I have like all the supplements, all the books. Um, and I
Five
think
Torches Deep is rad. It's so
yeah,
cool.
yeah, it's just like it's really quick, and I think like it just seems like a really nice pick up and play kind of game.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the thing is, like, I remember before you showed me Five Torches Deep, I had spent the better part of like last year. I spent the first like 4 or 5 months of last year designing a tabletop game. Um,
Mm-hmm.
that I ultimately stopped working on once I started reading about OSRs, to see if
Yeah.
if there's an OSR out there that fixes what I'm looking for. And I think one of these games between between uh Beyond the Walls, Through Sunken Lands, and Five Torches Deep has it. Because I'll put it this way: it's like I like old school games. I just don't like I don't like necessarily the dungeon crawl crunch part of it.
Fair.
I
Super fair.
Yeah, I don't like tracking rations. I don't like tracking supplies. It's why like what is that? It's like Dungeon DCEE or whatever. Dungeon
Mm-hmm.
Crawler
Dungeon
expanded.
Crawl. Is it Dungeon Crawl Classics
Yeah,
or
DCC, yeah, Dungeon Crawl Classics. It's why I'm not a big fan. It's why like I don't go out of my way for Dungeon Crawl Classics or
I
like
will I
yeah.
will say in Dungeon Crawl Classics, like defense, their reliance on random tables though, so cool. It's you
Mm,
have to be in the mood for it. Like if you go in being like, I really want to like tell a pretty like a certain amount of like craft to the story, that game will blow up everything for you, and it's terrible. But if you're like, I want to see what random chance does, you're gonna get like some like Adventure Time style like bonkersness that's super cool. But yes, it's
uh,
very there's a lot of crunch. It's very weird. They ask for things like D5s. It's
hmm.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think it's what I think is interesting about some of these games is like Beyond the Wall is very much a traditional like this is like second edition D&D. It's very
Hmm.
simple or it's more aligned with like but somewhere it's like a 1.5 edition D&D.
I'd
Um
agree with that. Yeah.
whereas like Five Torches Deep has a lot of like travel mechanics and like scene mechanics for like traveling through dungeons, which is really interesting. Like
Hmm.
and like timekeeping mechanics. Like a lot of these old school revival games have timekeeping for being in the dungeon, which is
Yeah,
interesting.
which I think is a good if you're gonna really spend time in the dungeon. I think it's a good
Mhm.
thing to have. Um,
Yeah.
I will say the thing I love about Five Torches Deep is the fact that it's like everybody I know plays 5e, but I really want to play second edition. Like that's what it is to me at
Mm,
least, and that's super cool. Um,
yeah.
but yeah, I personally have like a draw towards old school essentials, but that is
Mm,
entirely because I just want to have a little nostalgia trip.
mm,
Um, and to be honest, I don't really want to run old school essentials. I want to play a game of old school essentials, um, and just enjoy that for old time's sake. I don't even think I'd want to be like in a campaign of that. I think I would just be like, I want to run one dungeon. I just want to be in one dungeon adventure. Like that's it. That's all. Um,
okay.
yeah, just kind of like get for just for like kicks. The one that you haven't mentioned that I've been interested in lately has been Worlds Without Number.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, I'm attracted to that particularly as a GM because of it like Stars Without Number. It has a ton of like world building stuff that's just super cool, and I just want to dig into that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that one seems rad as hell, um,
Mm.
without a doubt. And so like I definitely I want like the physical book because I've seen the physical book and it's cool. One thing at a time though.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
Uncut Prince edition.
there's a lot of
Oh yeah, it's
rad. Yeah,
mm-hmm.
there's a lot of rad stuff out there. But yeah, so just kind of like because I think this is going to be end up where we're going to be in the meat of this episode. Because a lot of this has been just table setting. Have you played one? You kind of talked about it already with the mech game, but have
Mm-hmm.
you played one, or are you planning on playing an OSR style game?
So I'd like to, but um I think it's just my current D&D play group or tabletop
Mm-hmm.
play group is very split up right now.
Mm-hmm.
In the sense of like there are some folks that don't have the time, the space, the energy to learn a new system. And so
Yep.
D&D becomes an easy one because, they have it all in their head or they know how it roughly works because they've played it a handful of
Yes.
times. And then on the
Yes.
flip side, there's a lot of folks that are not at all attached to Dungeons and Dragons as a game. Their exposure
Mm-hmm.
to tabletop games was not through D&D. And so the very inkling of playing D&D has a precedent that they're not attached to or interested in. And so the games that we end up playing there are like you get a lot more like Blades in the Dark or Quest like
Absolutely.
or like I don't know, like Taro like reading based games and like games with like weird mechanics and strange rules that are very like um very small and very indie, which are very cool. And so that's kind of the spectrum at the moment. I think
Yeah.
there's definitely room for playing in one of these old school games. I just need to find the right one to pitch people on. Um
I hear you.
yeah, cuz like I had gotten to a point where I had pitched one group on playing Five Torches Deep, but then the game had to go on hiatus. So like we never got a chance to convert to it.
Yeah.
Um and so yeah, I'm currently just sitting here without any game, whether a game, yeah, without any game. um, I'm a
Derek has no games.
yep, I have no
It's a
games.
sad.
It's it's one of those things where there have been periods of my life where I've gone without having a constant game, and at first it's really nice, and then after a little bit, you kind of miss it. So, um,
Absolutely.
yeah, and I kind of am wondering. So yeah, that's the thing. I think if I were to play an OSR, I'd probably have to be the one GMing it. And so
Yep.
that's
Yep.
that
Yep.
that's the thing that I've been feeling and the thing that I've been noticing. It's like, yeah, I'm probably going to have to really push the button on that. Um which, like on the bright side isn't so bad because in my play groups now it's been like everyone's at a point where they've played enough D&D that they feel confident trying to game master. And
Mm-hmm.
so if the only thing that I need to bring forth to the table to game master is an OSR, that's great. Then it's the pressure's not all on me to GM other games. So
Yes.
can put more brain
Yes.
power into that. But yeah, nothing yet. What about you? Has an opportunity arisen?
So sort of. So I'm currently running a game of 5e. But I have OSR'd it up about as far as I can. Um, Mostly this has to do with the fact that like my players are mostly big 5e people.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the only other things they've played are a few story games. And they don't have the history that I do with these games, such that like they might have nostalgia around them or they might have interest in them. Um, and so the value is not was not initially apparent. So what I ended up doing is I stripped away a lot of character creation options, and
Mm-hmm.
replaced it with one method, which was you're going to roll for your stats in order they're locked. The end. Um, which is how like this is like like that old school, like you didn't have point buy or a standard array, you rolled your stats, and then I brought back, and this I think was more of a second edition thing, where it's like there are requirements to be like a paladin, you don't just can't just choose to be. um and so that alone made a huge difference. And then just taking the OSR sort of philosophy of exploration and sandboxiness, and um, letting the players lead, and like just kind of taking the philosophy in running a 5e game, and caring about things like what's the word, like rations and light and things, such that doing a dungeon delve has um, there are struggles with it. um,
Mm-hmm.
and to go along with all of that, uh, there is another thing that I did, which is kind of a which is a mode that's in the DM's guide, that I would say you turn this on, you're turning some OSR stuff on automatically, which is short rest 8 hours, long rest 7 days,
Mm-hmm.
and that alone has changed it, right? Like I don't know if you remember this, but like I think it's second edition where like hit points came back one per day or something like
Yep.
that. Um, it's not quite that brutal, but like that alone forces a change in the way they adventure. And I've been playing this game for like a month and a half now, and like watching how they go about casting spells, and like, okay, we want to go through this dungeon level, but like how long are we going to stay? Do we can take a short rest, but we can't take a long rest unless we're somewhere safe for 7 days. So like, okay, and healing starts mattering a lot more. Fights don't look the same as in like a typical 5e fight. Basically, to me, looks like um, all the characters use every power in their toolbox all at once, and then they go take a long rest.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, and
Yeah.
instead there's a lot more emphasis on like how good, like resource management, in terms of like abilities, and also like the players find a lot of value in things that are infinite sort of resources. Like they fucking love their cantrips and rituals now. um and being a fighter, which already in 5e is a really good class from like a raw damage dealing standpoint and whatnot, but like
Mm-hmm.
being a fighter rocks in a certain way, because it's like all my abilities come back at a short rest, and I never run out of swinging a sword, like. And
Mm-hmm.
so there's a different vibe to it, and it has a lot of, I would describe as OSR tendencies, because a lot of these ideas for me stemmed from researching OSR, watching things like Questing Beast and stuff, and being like, yeah, that would be fun. And that's one thing I think is really cool about the OSR, is it's not like, yeah, there are games specific to it, um, but it's actually a gaming philosophy. It's a style of play, in the same way that I would say there's a Critical Role, um, Adventure Zone style of play. Like and you can kind of slap that on top of most systems, so long as they have enough width and breadth. And as we've spoken about before, 5e's maybe greatest strength is that it's not too crunchy and not too story heavy. Like it's just it's a medium. So like it's very flexible and can be warped into different ways, even if there might be systems that are better for it, right? Like for
Hmm.
raw storytelling, I might say Dungeon Roller Quest is just way better. And then from like pure OSR style, I would say, yeah, probably Old School Essentials would do you a little bit better, you know.
Hmm.
But if everybody already knows 5e, it's going pretty well. I'm having a lot of fun with it, by the way,
Oh, yeah.
because the OSR allows for certain things that a typical game doesn't. So like a lot of drop in, drop out play, which has been great, and I have not been able to pull that off in a long, long, long time. Um,
Oh, yeah.
Wherein really it is such that like players can show up and they don't have to show up next week, and it's fine. Um,
Mhm.
you know, partially because there's such an incentive. Like another old school rule I brought back was rolls to return. So if you end in a dungeon, you're fucked. Like, so we're gonna at least abstract a roll to get back home. And also, I implemented time moves one for one between sessions. Um, so typically, basically, players only get a long rest between sessions.
Mm.
And so, like, it's been really good because it forces them to go back to a home base.
Mhm.
We can't be like, we're going to end right here in this dungeon room and we're going to pick up right here next time. Um, it instead requires we're going to the next thing, or we're going back. And then if you're in a safe space, other characters can come show up, other players can stay home. It's all good. I'm really really having fun with it. Um,
Mhm.
so that's been great. I think if I could play any other system though, I think it might be Worlds Without Number right now. I think.
Mhm.
And with all the OGL stuff, I have been like searching around to play something else, you know, like just want to like separate, but it's been fun and good. So, yeah.
Yeah. That's the thing. It's funny. I I have so many D&D books now. I have the Theros campaign guide. I have, Tasha's.
Oh, same.
I think I have Volo's, and then I recently just got the Dragonlance book. And
Mm,
so it's like I have all this D&D material that I would like to use, but I'm also still interested in looking into tabletop games that aren't Dungeons and Dragons, or in a lot of cases like Dungeon World or Quest. I really want something in between the two. And
fair.
I'm really hoping OSRs will fix that.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah. Uh,
I think one thing to say, like having gotten a game that I would call OSR light off the ground, is I think you have to give the players the right pitch, because when you talk about the old school games, what they might hear is a lot of crunch. They might hear that there's no story. They might hear that there's no like um that it's like that it's going to be like playing a retro video game. And in many ways it kind of is, but it also super isn't. Like but like that feeling of like, oh, this is going to be janky and hard and not fun, you know? But like I think the thing that I ended up pitching to people is like, this is going to be a real adventure. The story comes from what we do at the table together, and like your characters might really die, and like I've had some real character death. You know, and also like you're going to get to have multiple characters that you could swap out if you feel like, you know, and kind of pushing this thing of just like, listen, there's a lot of adventure to be found here, and that's what we're going for, you know.
mhm.
You just have to like shift your pitch a little bit is was my experience.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, maybe I'll run by my pitch next time I have one to you,
Yeah.
just to
Hell
make sure
yeah.
it works out. But yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I think suffice to say, we'll probably have more to report back in a few months if we've tried
I,
any of
I
these.
I
Yeah.
think so. I'm currently looking for any sort of any game I could use that could be a nice transition, like that I could
Mm-hmm.
swap over, because I have the buy-in with folks now. I'd love to be on a system that just works just a little bit better for it. But like I looked at old school essentials, and there just wasn't enough one for one um, like classes, you know. And so I don't know. Curious. I'm very curious. It's a fun, it's exciting and fun like realm to play around in for me at least, because it's full of nostalgia and also brand new stuff.
Yeah.
Which is why I think I like for OSR Renaissance better than Revival, because it's
Yeah.
also like there's new stuff too. It's not just bringing back the old. It's
Mm.
both, and it's super cool.
Okay. You heard it here first, folks. We are OSR Renaissance, old school Renaissance people, not revival
please,
people.
please no.
I'm
Revival
kidding.
people. I love you. Like
Yeah,
I
no,
just
yeah.
think I like a word better. It's all good.
Yeah, they're both great. And Wikipedia has all three. Renaissance,
Yep.
Revival, OSR, so it's fine.
Yep. Yep.
All right. Well, thanks, folks, for tuning in this week to Dane and Derek. As always, you can follow the show everywhere at Dane and Derek. And you can
Where they
find,
can, yeah,
oh, yeah.
can they find your films?
Yeah, vimeo.com/Benig-Aiello. I'm hoping to be uploading more frequently there as sort of my, regular practice this year to keep those muscles
Regular
flexing.
practice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. 10 out of 10 on
Hmm.
that. You can find me at danewrites.com. It's a link to Substack where you can find my writing. There's also links to some other work I've done in the past, podcast, music, the like. Um, yeah, so go right ahead and follow me there. Thanks for hanging out with us. We'll see you next time. Maybe with something not D&D related. Maybe.
Maybe.
Maybe. Maybe not. I
Who
don't
knows?
know. Future us knows.
Yes. All right.
We'll leave it to them.
Yep. Bye.
Out here on the sand, not far from land. Sure, I'm warm, but I wish I was cold with you. Out here on the sand, not far from land. Sure, I'm warm, but I wish I was cold.